Elden Ring NightReign just came out. Well, not just, it's been out for around 5 days, but nonetheless it is super duper hard and lots of people have been struggling on it, including me. And a lot of my personal struggles have been from having random teammates that are so utterly bad that I've decided to play solo. So in today's video, I'm going to be telling you guys the best, or just I'm going to be ranking all the classes from worst to best specifically for playing solo, so that way I can hopefully help you out, make your journey more enjoyable and just better overall. And also further rankings, I'm not going to specifically do like 5th spot, 4th spot. I'll be putting it in tier, so like A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, S tier, because it's super hard to definitively rank these guys. So with this like A tier, B tier shit, you can kind of like interchange the ones on the same tier. That way, if I think two are like really similar and like they're kind of the same on how easy it's going to make you run, they'll be in the same tier. So you can just interchange those bad boys. And before we get into the rankings, please make sure to like, subscribe, and just let me know in the comments your opinions, just any thoughts this video provokes, let me know in the comments. And now we're starting off in the last spot, which is going to be, I'd say probably the D tier, because nothing here is really F tier, because a lot of these classes could be viable if you're just good enough. And our first class in D tier is going to be the Recluse. And I don't necessarily think the Recluse is bad, but it is a heavily magic focused, caster. And the magic fights just take a long time. They're very good for supporting your allies, but in a solo environment where you have to prioritize the speed of going through areas a lot more, the fights just drag on. Even with regular enemies, it's going to take a while, so you're going to run out of time, get less loops, get less runes, which equals less levels, and it's going to ultimately lead you to being weaker at the end fight. And kind of as I already said before, I'll just relay this one more time, she really cannot use regular weapons at all. You're just going to have to stay from a distance and spam spells, because she does really no damage with a regular weapon. Also, she has very little health, which for a solo setting is going to be really tough, because all the enemies are going to be focused on you, and you might get one-shotted with how little health she has. And coming up next, which is going to be the last spot in the D tier, is Garkin. Firstly, I want to say I really love the design of this character. I just love how he looks. He's very good with dealing with crowds, and he's very good at reviving his teammates and just being a team player that the enemies can focus on. But in a solo setting, he's firstly too slow. I mean, he can't really dodge, and you're not going to be able to tank every single attack. And a lot of the time, since you can't dodge, you're kind of just forced to sit there and block, and the enemies will just break your stance quite often. And it's just, he's too sluggish and too slow. I mean, he has decent scalings. Everything about him is relatively decent, but he's just not made for solo. And coming up next in the C tier is my boy Iron Eye. Now, firstly, as I've stated with all the other characters, this guy is really good. I mean, really good for a team setting, because you can just shoot and chip at enemies from a mile away and then not do anything. Or for some enemies, they'll kind of just get in that walking stance where they walk towards you while you nail them from afar, because you're too far from them to aggro on you. But in this case, the enemies are obviously going to aggro on you and go straight to you because you're a solo. And yes, he does good damage for a bow, but considering you want to get through these areas super fast, he's not dealing that much damage. And you kind of just have to stand there and wait a minute as you just slowly chip away enemies' health, which I honestly think is pretty boring, but it's also inefficient considering you can just run in there with a weapon from one of the better classes, just slash in there and get out. And I mean, his stats aren't really that crazy. You're best off sticking to a bow, or I'm pretty sure a dex weapon. Also, he just doesn't have a lot of health, because, if you're in solos, you're going to be making mistakes, and mistakes are a lot more fatal here, so not having a lot of health to negate those mistakes and negate the damage taken is pretty unfortunate. Now, coming up next in the B tier is Revenant. Now, I personally like Revenant a lot, and I feel like she's one of those characters that my randoms are always really good with using, and honestly, in a solo aspect, she's really not that bad. It definitely depends in the hands of the holder a lot more than just how good this character is, because it's a very skilled and thought out class. And the main reason I think she deserves this kind of mid spot is because of her summons. Her summons are not that crazy. They don't do a shit ton of damage. They don't have a shit ton of health and stuff like that. But you can choose one of these 3 summons, and they're just really good at distracting the aggro, which is super important in a game focused on 3 players, because there's going to be a shit ton more enemies and a shit ton of more bosses than you're used to handling. And with a person to kind of negate those, that pressure and all those other enemies, it makes it a lot easier. Her damage is honestly pretty weak, and considering her XL, besides, her weak slashes, is kind of her faith, I'm pretty sure, you're not going to have a lot of time to cast faith spells, so that's kind of another negative. But the summons are super helpful, so that's why she deserves this spot. Now, coming up next in the B tier, which is one of the first classes that I think are a lot better in solo than they are in teams, which is the Raider, which is kind of like a tank like the Guardian, but just outputs way more damage. The only down part is he is super duper slow, and you're kind of only limited to strength options and just, you know, shit like that. And although he kind of feels clumsy and pretty sluggish at times, the amount of damage he outputs is kind of able to negate that, so you're still able to move through areas pretty fastly. I mean, he also has quite a bit of health, so that's another positive, so you can just kind of make mistakes and keep moving forward, which obviously is bound to happen when you're a little bit more slow and sluggish. But yeah, this is just a cool character to feel like you're just absolutely shitting on guys and just to feel strong and just cool. Now, coming up next, which is also in the B tier, that is going to be Duchess, our last and final class in the B tier. Now, in hindsight, or just overviewing this character, you would definitely think she is the best class for solo because of how absolutely fast, you know, her dodge, her running, and how fast she attacks, and how she can make herself invisible to enemies. I mean, those are all super great factors that can just make going throughout areas and mini bosses super fast and super efficient. But she just doesn't really output a lot of damage. And that's kind of all I have to say about Duchess, so it's on to the next. And now we are on to the big old A tier, where the big boys are. And coming in that first slot, and the only slot in the A tier, is going to be the Executioner. Now, this is probably one of the coolest looking characters, and this is probably every single person who sucks as your teammate is going to use this guy, because he's just cool. You know, who doesn't want to deflect shit? But most of the time, deflecting isn't really necessary. Like, it doesn't do a whole lot. Yes, it kind of buffs your weapon, you have some cool follow-ups, but I feel like what you accomplished out of this is kind of overglazed, especially in teams. Like, there's really no use for this guy in teams. Like, when he turns into the wolf, that is super helpful, but I think his wolf thing outshines his deflecting. Now, it does seem like I'm being a lot more negative and positive. I just don't mean that that's just all the negatives this guy has. I mean, he is also a really good character. For me to put him in the top 2, that means he has to automatically be a great character. He has S scaling in Dex and in Arcane, I'm pretty sure, which are, you know, just 2 really good factors. To have 2 S scalings, it kind of opens your options, and it makes you pretty OP with katanas. And going into that S tier spot, I just think there's no reason you shouldn't use this guy. There's no reason to really hate on this guy for solo play. That is going to be the Wilder. And this is kind of just a jack of all trades. He does nothing absolutely fantastic. Like, all these other guys have their super duper specialties, but this guy is just good in every category. Like, he has a lot of health, he does decent damage, I mean, he does pretty good damage, he's also pretty fast, and you're just able to blaze through areas fastly while dealing damage and while being able to make mistakes and take damage. And I also think that Wilder causes for the most diverse and enjoyable runs because of how many different weapons that he can use. He has like a total of like something like 40 or some shit like that. He just is able to use a lot of weapons and deal lots of damage with them. And that is about it for my ranking, guys. If you like this video and you like my ranking, please make sure to like and comment below, and I will see you in the next one.